All right, we're back and we're going to actually start the drawing portion of our Family Guy herself, where we're turning these pre-produced images into an actual Gravit vector file that we can then print and create and turn into stickers. Okay, so we're going to start with the layer we want to draw. We've got our instructions over here on the left. We're just going to read through these real quick. So we're going to start with the layer we want to draw. We're going to start with the head today, just because it seems like a good place to start. You've got all these tools that we've talked about and used before: the pen tool, line tools, shape tools, the Pathfinder tools, the coloring. We're going to use sort of all that together to start recreate this. And just a few reminders that inside each layer, so inside the head layer, inside the shirt layer, you can stack things above and below each other to create more effects. And a reminder that your colors are in the color palette under the in use option. So we'll be able to find that on your colors under in use. Okay. And step 19, recreate a section of your template image. The pen tool is your friend. Think about the work in your Bezier curve game. You are repeating these steps just using your template as the guideline. Instead of that outline that the game gave you, you've got this image to be sort of your guide. Take your time and think ahead. How are the points going to have to modify? I'm going to walk you through me building the head on this one, so you have, again, more details. So I blew this up just so it's a little easier to see. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sort of zoom in with Control Plus because, well, I mean, it's much easier to work if you're right here looking at the main face. So I'm going to come over here to my head panel and I'm going to unlock that layer. And I'm going to look at this and I'm going to try and decide, how do I want to start? And I think the basics I'm thinking about is how in my head am I going to sort of divide this face into pieces? So I think about the colors. I'm going to need different sections for each color. And I'm thinking about how they're layered on top of each other. So obviously the overall head shape is at the bottom. On top of that, you've got this beard, the glasses, and the hair, or lack thereof. Okay, so that's sort of the next layer. And then on top of that, you've got the nose outline, this ear outline, maybe the actual hair follicles, maybe the mouth. We'll just sort of play with it and see as we go. But we're going to rebuild this completely starting now. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my pen tool. I've got it on a border of 1, that's fine. And the thing I want to think about right off the bat is that because I'm going to be layering things, if I can't see it, I don't have to be perfect about how it lines up. So for example, if I'm going to outline everything that's skin tone up here, the majority of what is skin tone, I'm going to look at, well, I have to follow this line. I have to come across here. Oh, but I've got to get this too. But remember, the beard is going to cover this bottom edge, so we can skip it, sort of. So I'm going to start here. I'm just going to click. You notice I'm not worried about lining it up perfectly. Come up here, click and drag, and try and match that edge. Okay, that works. I'm going to press Alt. Alt, shift that down a little bit. Come over here, kind of like that. So coming down here to where the ear covers. Now notice I'm going to click right in the center of the ear because I'm expecting that I'm going to rebuild that ear in a different place. Okay, in a different layer to stack on top of it. That way it'll hide this edge. So I look at this, I could follow the beard down, but that just seems like a lot of work since it doesn't matter. We don't have to have the skin color behind the beard. So I'm just going to sort of click down and around because that's going to give me skin color right here. And I'm going to come out to this edge, click, drag a little bit because I want it to have that good angle. Follow along, make sure that matches the way I want, and boom, I'm up to the top. I've recreated. This covers my outer head shape, so just the shape of the head. You notice it starts out with white fill, but that's really not going to help me. So I'm going to come over here to fills, and I'm going to change it from color fill to background fill. And remember, what that background fill does is it makes it transparent. You can see through the fill. So right now I have this shape that's going to end up being my skin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this layer. And right now it just says path. And that's not really helpful to me in the long run. I don't know. I'm going to have a whole bunch of these things and they'd all be called path and it's not going to matter. So I'm going to double click and I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this head outline for skin color. Okay. And the main reason for that is that now when I get a whole list of things, I'll know exactly this is where I go to modify my skin color. And now I'm going to go and I'm going to go ahead and lock it because I don't want to mess with it. It can just sort of sit there. So the next thing I want to do is I want to look at, well, maybe I want to look at this beard. Okay. And this beard is going to be a little different. So I'm going to make my head outline for skin color disappear. And I'm going to look at this and say, well, I need to outline the beard, but it's got to have a hole in it. So if I think about creating that hole, I want to jump back and think about compound paths and our Pathfinder tool, specifically the minus front, because we want to kind of cut a hole in the beard. So let's start out real simply. Let's outline our beard shape. I'm going to go ahead and start right up here at this corner. Okay, and try and match out the beard outline however I like it. I don't really like that, so I'm going to undo. I'm going to come and put an anchor point right there. Alt, shift my edges, and you're going to see me go all the way around. You'll notice when I get here to the nose, I'm not worried about passing that over. So once again, I'm not worried about it crossing under the nose at all because that's not really going to affect anything. Because again, we're going to cover it up with the nose outline. Now you'll notice as I connect to this end, it's thrown off this curve. Okay. And that's because when I connected it, it became a symmetrical anchor point. And so we're going to fix that real quick. So we're going to come up here. We're going to grab our sub select tool. So this is that direct select option or the white arrow that we talked about in another video. And I'm going to make sure that I have that access point, or excuse me, that anchor point selected. I'm going to come over here to my joints and I've got those 4 choices. So right now it's asymmetric. I want to disconnect it. So now that it's disconnected, I can pull this back down and make sure that it matches what I want. Now to make sure it matches, I'm going to go ahead and change my fill to background. So once again, I can sort of see how this is working out. And you know, this looks okay. It's sort of our basic outline for our beard. Okay. So coming in, we can see it works out. It's following along all the lines, and it should work out for us. But now we need to draw this inner shape. So once again, I'm going to grab my pen tool. And I'm just going to pick a point to start. I personally, I'm going to start right here on this sort of joint and look and see what I can do to match each of these. Again, using Alt to change the curvature. Okay, get to this end, get it there. Alt to bring it down. We're going to jump all the way down here, create this curve. And once again, I'm just pressing Alt every time when I want to change directions. And we come all the way around back up to our starting point. And again, it did the same thing where it modified that piece. So I'm going to go ahead, once again, change my fill back to background so I can sort of see through it. Grab my sub-select arrow, my white arrow, and this point, and I'm going to change it to a disconnected joint. And now I can come back, modify that. And I'm going to come over here. Obviously, I made a mistake there. So again, disconnect that joint and change that as well. And there we go. We can click outside and we've got these 2 pieces. But now we need to cut the hole in it. So we have to create that union path. So I'm going to go ahead using my black arrow and I'm going to select both of these outlines. Okay, and I'm going to make sure that they're selected. I'm going to select this inside one first. Get them both selected. And then I'm going to come up here to my Pathfinder tools, and I have to think about what do I care about. I don't want to connect the two of them. I don't want to union them. What we want to do is sort of minus the front, which is the subtract option. So there we go. We've created a compound shape. And to test it, the easy way is just to grab it, put some sort of a color in it, and look, there we go. It still cuts through. So because I want to still be able to see behind it, I am going to go ahead and change it back to background fill. And so we've got our beard done. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this the beard outline right over there. So again, we've got these two pieces that are put together to create this beard outline. So moving on, I kind of want to look at what is it that I can do next? Okay, what piece do I want to do next? And as I look at it, I just sort of see that, well, right off the bat, I've got the nose to do, I've got the ear to do, I've got sort of the hair shape. So I'm just going to start moving up the face a little bit. Let's look at this nose. So I'm going to grab my pen tool. And this is, you can sort of tell, it's a single line. So I'm going to go ahead and create that with my pen tool. Oh, I don't like where that ended up, so I'm going to undo that with Control Z. There we go. Press Alt to change the angle. See if I like that. That's a little sharp, so I'm going to, again, undo, come back. I'm going to pull a little harder on that one. There we go. Again, changing the angle, not a big deal. And once again, it really is just a matter of thinking through sort of the next step. You have to think a step ahead whenever you're using the pen tool. So I've created this outline. That's going to be fine for what we're doing. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to rename this the nose outline. Okay. And you'll notice as we go, everything's just sort of stacking on top of each other. It doesn't look really good right now. But again, we're going to layer and fill so that it stacks and blocks the hidden stuff so that it doesn't matter. Okay. Get rid of that beard outline, get rid of the nose outline. Let's look at this ear. So let's go ahead and let's create our ear outline. So I'm going to grab my pen tool. And again, I'm going to sort of click right there. Maybe come around like this. Oh, don't really like that. I should have adjusted that. So once again, we're going to modify that. Come back down. And again, because this is going to get covered by the beard, I don't really care that it's not perfect. Okay. Change it again to from a color. Oops, don't have it selected. So select it and then change it from a color fill to a background fill so I can see through it. And you notice the ear has this sort of mark inside of it. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my pen tool and I'm going to try and duplicate that a little bit. And again, right now, I'm not even worried about the thickness of the lines or anything like that. I just want to kind of put it all together. So over here, we've got these two pieces that are sort of together. And what I want to do is I want them to be sort of their own thing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to drag that layer inside my head layer. And I'm going to call this ear. Okay. And I can drag both of my pieces. Oops, missed it. Inside that. And I can sort of look at this and say, well, this is my ear outline. And this is my inner ear line. And again, now that I can shrink this out, it puts it all together, okay? And it keeps it organized. And that's the hardest part, is keeping everything organized. So next up, I look at this and I've done my nose, I've done my ear. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do sort of this shaded area of the head where the hairline is. And so once again, let's just jump in. I'm going to work in the head layer. Whoops. I'm going to work in the head layer. You notice it's red, so that's telling me that I'm in this head layer because that object is red. Grab my pen tool, and I'm just going to look. I just want to kind of follow this along. So click, 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 and it's going to get covered up by a lot of the rest of this, so it doesn't really matter if it's perfect or not there. Oh, and once again, we've got to go back, use our direct select tool to select that point, change it to an asymmetric, and modify it back. Now to make sure that it is where I want it, go ahead and do that. There we go. Now that works for me. Maybe I'll look at this one and I decide that I want to make that curve a little bit smoother. Again, make this one asymmetric. That'll work for me. So I'll take that, grab my pointer. I've got this, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rename this one to, we'll call it hair color. And I look at this and I see it's like, well, I've got all these individual hairs that have to be filled out. So let's create another new layer, drag it inside the head layer, and we're going to call this hairline. We're going to put my hair color inside of that hairline. And now we need to make our hair. So I'm going to grab just the line tool right now, I think. I'm just going to go through, press L to get back to the line tool. And I'm just making a rough copy. It does not have to be perfect. And your designs won't necessarily be perfect, and that's okay. We're just using this sort of as the basis for what we're doing. Okay. So marks all that out. And what do we have? Well, we've got this piece right here. And we've got all the little hair marks, which we'll fine tune those in a little bit as we work through to make them a little bit more reasonable so that they're not just these perfectly rectangular pieces. In fact, let's go ahead and click on one and hold down Shift and click on all of them. So we've got them all selected. Let's go over to our borders. Let's round them on the edges. Okay, so that way they're not so stiff, and maybe make them 2. So we've got these little, that's a little thick, maybe 1.5. There we go, we'll go with that. And so there is our hairline path. And again, I'm gonna make that disappear because I don't need to see it right now. I'm gonna make my ear disappear because I don't need to see that either. And now we need to look at what's left, which is just gonna be our glasses and our eyebrows. So let's do the easy things first. And let's go ahead and recreate those eyebrows. So once again, this is just the pen tool. Click, click, give it a little, whoop, I have the wrong button. So pen tool again, we're gonna go click, click. Oh, I'm not having the best day. So why am I having an issue? Well, because I was still clicked into the hairline layer, so I couldn't draw on there because it wasn't visible. So actually, if I make the hairline layer visible, hey, look, there it is. But we don't want that there. So we are going to go ahead um, and get rid of that. Okay. Shrink that hairline layer out of the way. And again, we're going to make it disappear and lock it. That's one of the great things about locking things is that once you lock it, you can't mess them up, which is what I was just trying to do. So I'm going to click on the head again. Once again, now we've got our red box outline there. So coming in here, click, click. There's that one. So we've got one of our eyebrows. Click, click and drag. And there's our second eyebrow. And I'm just going to select those both real quick, maybe make those 2. And again, just like we did with our hair, I'm going to soften the ends of them by turning them to a round end. So there we go. We've got those. And I'm just going to call these literally what they are. So right eyebrow, not eyebrow, but eyebrow, and our left eyebrow. And the goal is, again, just to keep things organized. I'm going to go ahead and lock them. And then I'm going to make them disappear because I don't need to see them for what I'm about to do. Because here's the hard part. Now I've got to build these glasses. And the glasses on mine are definitely the hardest piece to build for this. So I have to think about how they're built and what kind of shapes I can go. So I see very obviously we've got some rectangles. We've got another sort of skewed rectangle. There's a curve right here. and then looks kind of like these little angles. They're kind of like little triangles. So we're going to kind of put all that together to build these shapes. So the first thing I think is I want to start with the rectangle portion to build the frames. So I grab my rectangle tool, draw a rectangle. There it is. Now that doesn't really help me because it fills it automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to background fill just so I can sort of see what's going on. Select it, and I'm going to add a border because I want to be able to see where that line is. I'm going to bump that border up, maybe make it, say, 5. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And I look at this, and I was like, well, the original glasses are curved, so I need to curve this in some way. So I can't do it with the ends. So what do I have to do? I have to have it selected, and we have to look at these corner options. So we can sort of play with it however we want to. Looking at it, I'm just going to go with a corner of 5. That gives it a nice curve to it. Okay, so that works well. And then I'm going to copy and paste. So Control C, Control V, drag a copy right over. Make sure it's all lined up really well. And you notice this one is not quite the same size. So I'm going to drag that right bounding box piece just to make that a little bigger in both directions. And that's just part of the way the artwork is skewed. So next things I see is there is, again, a rounded rectangle shape right in there. So I'm going to grab my rectangle again. There we go. Now this one, I'm just going to fill it with black because it doesn't have to be hollow on the inside. And I'm going to go ahead once again, look at those corners. I want it to match. So I'm going to type a corner of 5 and look at it. And it's like, well, that's actually a little too much. That doesn't look good. So that's closer. So I'm going to sort of play with that a little bit, make it the way I like it. That looks okay. Maybe shrink it up just a hair, make it a little thinner. That'll work. Then I'm going to again Control C copy, Control V paste, move a version of it over here to the right hand side. Okay, and you can sort of tell as I go, I'm just sort of modifying my shapes as needed to make them coherent with each other and everything else I'm doing. So the next thing I see is there's sort of this central curve here. And to me, that just says I need to grab my pen tool and we'll click, click, and drag myself a line. So how big is it? Let's try 5. That looks, that's a little narrow, maybe 7. That'll work. And once again, we're going to have to go in, we're going to have to make those ends rounded. Okay. And I look at this and I'm not super happy with that. So maybe I'm going to shrink it down a little bit, narrow it up just a hair. Okay. Maybe move it. I'm just using the right and left arrows to sort of tweak my positioning. Grab this one, move this one over just a bit. And again, this is really experimentation. It's about you figuring out what looks good on your art box. Okay, so that's looking okay right now. So now we need our earpiece. So I'm going to again grab my pen tool. And in this case, it's pretty straightforward. I can just click, 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 fill that with black again. Now I look at this and I suddenly see, well, I've got this weird gap and that's no good. So I've got a couple of options. Number one, I could try and drag this one out, but I still get that odd piece right there. So let's zoom in. I'm going to Control Z, spacebar, and I see I've got this sort of edge and I need to make some modifications. So I'm going to grab my sub select tool. I'm going to grab just this point. I'm going to drag that point just down 1. And then suddenly, hey, it's fitting in. We've got this curve. That looks good. I'm going to press Control minus to zoom back out. Spacebar, click and drag to sort of recenter. Zoom in just a touch. And I'm looking at this and, well, I really don't like that. It's flaring, so I'm going to narrow it out. That'll work. That should probably be fine for what we're doing today. So I've got all these separate pieces, and I need to think about what do I do to connect them. So the easiest way to connect them would be to use the Union Pathfinder, but I can't do that while these are individual lines, so the 2 rectangles and this. So we're going to grab our pointer option, click on that, and we note that, hey, our border is 5. I'm going to select all of these, or excuse me, I'm going to select these two because these have the same border. And I'm going to go ahead and go back up to modify and path and convert to outline. Okay, enter the value for the outline. Our border was 5, so we want this to be half of that, so 2.5. And again, it always looks funny when you first do it because you have to go back and turn the border off by typing in 0 and changing it to filled. And hey, look, now we've got a shape that matches that. This one had a border of 7. In fact, I'm going to look, maybe, is it going to look better at a 5? No, it's not. So 7 it is. Same deal, go up modify, path, convert to outline. It's at 7, which means we need half of that, which is 3.5. Hit OK. And again, turn that border to 0 and then fill that. Okay, so there we go. So we've got those glasses kind of built. Now we're missing these sort of pieces in here. They're kind of like little angles, little triangles. So I'm going to grab my polygon tool, build myself a little triangle. I'm holding shift to give myself a perfectly flat one. I'm going to rotate it all the way over because I want it to be facing down. I'm going to fill it with black so it matches. And now I'm going to move it over here and I'm going to sort of see what looks good. So I'm just playing with it. I might change the height a little bit, change those angles. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Maybe center it just a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to Control C, Control V, copy and paste, move it down here. We've got another one over here to make it match. And that actually makes this blend really well. So I'm happy with those glasses. So I'm going to select all of them now. And I'm going to come up to my Pathfinder. And my Pathfinder to smash it all together is going to be Union. Press Union, come back. And look, now we have one object that we can fill separately, okay, with whatever colors we need. Now I have to think about the actual eyes themselves. So let's come over here. I'm going to rename this compound shape to glasses because that's what they are. Now we have to think about the eyes. And in here, there are 3 separate things. There's the eyelid, the iris, or the white part of the eye, not the iris, but the actual white of the eye. And then we've got the pupil. So let's sort of build our shapes accordingly. And these are real simple. So we're going to grab a rectangle. We've got one shape here. Notice I'm not worried about overlapping. Okay, and that's going to be our white for the lower portion of the eye. Then we're going to have our actual eyeball, which is somewhere right in there. I'm going to hold down Shift so I get a perfect circle. Okay, and that one's going to be black. And then there is the eyelid, which is sort of on top. I'm going to sort of just draw that there. Okay, now obviously those colors are all messed up, and that's fine. But what we're going to do is we're going to grab these eyeglasses, and we notice we've got all of this stuff here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer, drag it into the head, and I'm going to call this layer eyes and glasses. And I'm going to start dragging pieces into that, just like this. And then I drag my glasses, and suddenly my glasses are on top. So it doesn't matter that these rectangles don't fit. To make this look sort of right, I'm going to go ahead and grab from my fills my skin color swatch. Okay, and I look at this, and I don't know. I think this should move down a little bit. I think my pupil should move down a little bit. That looks a little better. So now I'm going to select all of these, and I'm going to Control C, Control V. So again, copy paste, slide it on over. And again, this eye is a little bit bigger than the other one, so I can just grab the bounding boxes and make adjustments as needed. Okay, maybe the pupil needs to move over. Well, maybe not quite that much. And I look at that and it's like, oh, that kind of works. So again, I'm going to lock those. I can make them disappear. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make sure all of these become visible. So all of my different layers can now show up. So now we get to start filling stuff in and making sure they're in the correct order in our stack. So we've got our glasses. So just to start grabbing stuff, the eyebrows, they're okay where they're at. My hairline piece, well, the hairline is made up of a whole bunch of different things. It's got all these individual paths, but also the hair color box. Oh, we're still locked. We have to unlock in order to be able to modify. So I'm going to unlock all of these real quick. So I grab my hair color box, go to my fills. It's not a background fill anymore. It's a color fill. And for color fill, there it is. That works. We can shrink our hairline. Look at the ear. So in the ear outline's got to be filled. Again, color fill with our skin tone. And you'll notice that we covered up our inner ear mark. So we're going to drag that above it. And then we're going to look at the size. Maybe it needs to be 2, and then round the ends. That's a little big, so maybe 1.5. We'll play with that as it goes, okay? So coming back, next piece I'm going to look at, let's just grab our head outline and fill it with the correct color. Whoops, wrong button. Color fill, put skin color in there. Okay, so we've got that skin color going on. Let's grab our beard, take our beard to a color fill, give it the beard color. Looks good so far. Okay. We look at this, our nose outline. Now, our nose outline, it is above our beard, but because it doesn't have a fill, you can still see the beard. So let's go ahead and fill it anyways, even though it's not a solid piece. So skin color, there we go. So what it's done is it's tried to draw this line invisibly, and then it's filled that space. So I'm looking at this, we're looking okay so far, but I see a few errors. First one is the mouth. We forgot the mouth. So I'm going to make my skin color disappear, and let's draw the mouth real quick. Boom. 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 Now you notice it tried to fill, so we don't want that. So I'm going to eliminate that with just changing it to background fill. Grab my pen again, click, click. There we go. We've got that. And I look at both of those. Whoops, wrong button. I'm going to select both of those. And again, I'm going to go in. I like it with the rounded ends on those. I think it looks a little better. And maybe they're a little thin. So again, maybe I'm going to come up to my border and maybe make it 1.5 points. Okay, just to give it a little thickness. So these paths, well, I accidentally made them inside the beard outline. So that's no good. So I've got one that's outside the beard outline and one that's way above it. So I'm going to drag this one way up here, and I'm just going to put this mouth 1 and mouth 2, okay? And I can come back down here to my head outline for skin color, make it visible again. And again, we can sort of see how it's working. And right now we're looking okay. Now we've got a few things we have to think about. The beard obviously needs to cover the ear. So the beard needs to be dragged above the ear. And then we need to move our nose outline back above the beard. And that's the power of layers, is that you can build and change and modify stuff up and down however you need to. Now I'm looking at it and I'm trying to figure out, well, what's next? Well, my glasses, my ear needs to be above my glasses. So I'm going to grab this. I'm actually going to drag them down because the glasses need to be below the ear. And there we go. So now they're hidden. But up, now my hairline needs to be below the glasses as well. Because what we've done is we were using things like the glasses to block those weird edges. And now as I look, there are a few modifications we have to make. So if I look right down here, press Z, drag a box to zoom in, obviously these aren't lining up properly. So I'm going to grab my sub-select tool. I'm going to grab this point on my beard outline. I'm just going to drag it over until I get it in a position where I like it. That's not great. So let's go into the corners and let's take our join and make our join rounded. And to do that, we actually have to select the whole of the beard outline. Oh, we're missing them. We were in the miter limit, so that won't let us do that. So that's not our most ideal thing, but we can work with that. So let's zip in here, sub-select. Let's zoom in a little closer and sort of see what our options are. Obviously, because we're so small right now, we're not exactly able to make this perfect. But again, if you think about it, you're probably not going to notice that once you get that sort of lined out. Now you will absolutely notice this. So we need to come back in here, modify this piece just so it covers that. Maybe move that just up a hair. This one again, trying to make those borders line up a little bit better. There we go. But look at that. We've recreated the basics of this face in Gravit. Now the head is going to be the hardest piece to do. It's going to take the longest. You notice that this took a fairly long time, but you're going to get better at this as you work. So from here on out, we're going to go ahead and we're going to work on the shirt, the arms, the pants, and we're going to see how we have to line all this stuff up as we go. So let's take a look and see how we do that.